welcome to the Quantum Alignment Show. My name is Betsy. I'll be hosting the show today. Karen is traveling. I'm happy to be here with you. The topic for today is about divine timing in the human design chart and beyond. And I figured, since also it's Mercury retrograde, which is a time when the universe kind of asks us to slow down a little bit and look at our lives and what might be happening for us, that timing was an appropriate topic as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation, and we can get started. All right. So I love this quote by Carl Jung: "The right time comes when one is ready." So we live in a time, where the concept of manifesting and all of that has become a little bit more mainstream. And also after, the book or the movie The Secret came out, I think there are some conceptions that we should be able to just create our lives the way we want, now, like right away. And I think there are some big lies or misconceptions that we're kind of told, well, just manifest it, just change your thoughts and everything will change, or even just do it, right? That's something that we're all told a lot. Or if you work hard enough, you can achieve anything, and that the harder you work, the faster you'll get somewhere, right? But most of us actually aren't designed to live this way or to manifest this way, and it can be deeper than that. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit because I think it can feel really self-defeating when you feel like you're doing everything right and yet things aren't coming together and manifesting the way that you hoped. We also live in a real time where instant gratification is a big thing, right? We want everything to happen right now, and I think technology has really brought that even more and more to the forefront for a lot of us. There was a recent YouGov survey that said that 41 to 45% of people feel that technology has made them more impatient. We just want everything to happen right now, and life and the timing of life and the universe don't really work that way. So, we're told you can do anything, you can be anything you set your mind to, and it really is true, but it's also important to remember that timing can play a role in when our ideas manifest, how quickly they manifest, and not to overlook that important piece. So let's start by talking a little bit about timing as it relates to the human design chart. So the first place I want to start is actually to take us back to the foundation of human design, which is type and strategy. And to remember that waiting in some form is built into strategy for 91% of us. That's a huge majority of people that are not necessarily designed to just go out and do things. So for those of us who are designed to wait, to respond to something, and that would be my generator types, projectors, and reflectors, remember that just because an opportunity or an invitation comes your way, it also doesn't mean you have to say yes. I always have to give this caveat to people when I'm doing a reading, especially because if we're so excited about something, we're just waiting for something to respond to, or waiting to be invited, or waiting for that opportunity. When something shows up, anything, we can kind of leap at it, right? But the key is you need to be waiting for the correct opportunities, the things that feel aligned. And then I want to just call out, and this is something that Karen has also been talking about a little bit more lately, is the concept of responding. And the word responding is used officially in human design for the generator type strategies, but every type really has a degree of responding built into their design. And so you always want to be checking in to make sure that whatever's showing up for you feels right. So let's start with generators. And again, what makes a generator is having a divined sacral center. So this will include generators and manifesting generators. And I want to just also offer that if you don't have your human design chart, if you're not familiar with your personal design, and you'd like to know it as I go through this presentation so you can understand which of these concepts apply to you personally, you can go to freehumandesignchart.com and just input your birth information there and run your chart and save it right to your computer. And it only takes a minute or two. So you could do that right now and save it to your computer and have it as we go through this presentation. So generators are designed to wait to respond as their strategy. And the key with that is to be tuned into your sacral response. That sacral response that says uh-huh or uh-uh. It's a nonverbal response. So for generators, if you're leaping into things without responding, or if you're not connected to that sacral response, then you're not necessarily going to be entering into the correct work or the correct opportunities. And that's going to really impact the timing, right? So the first question I always like to ask generators when they're looking at this, if things, they feel like nothing's showing up, nothing's happening in the way that they are wanting right now, is to really ask them, well, are you following strategy? Are you responding to what's showing up in your external environment? Do you know what your response feels like? Do you know the difference between your uh-huh or your uh-uh when you're responding? And do you trust that response, and do you follow it? So these are the keys for generators in waiting to respond. I also want to remind the straight generator types that part of your learning strategy and part of your strategy is this stair-step learning curve. You're going to have a big surge of growth, and then you're going to plateau for a little while to integrate what you learned, right? This can be really, really frustrating. The bursts of growth can feel really amazing, like, oh my God, things are finally taking off. I responded, this opportunity is panning out, I'm growing, I'm seeing the fruits of my labor. And then you hit that plateau and it feels like nothing's happening. But it doesn't mean that nothing's happening. It's really an important time of integration because you just went through a huge surge in mastery. And if you continued at that pace, you wouldn't necessarily be able to integrate and apply everything that you just gathered. So remember, generators, that this plateau and the timing of that plateau is important. Remember to honor it. It can be frustrating, but allow yourself to integrate, because this is how you're going to really achieve the mastery that's part of what you're here to do. It's part of the importance of your role and help you prepare for that next surge forward. If you're not able to integrate everything you've learned during the last surge, you may not actually be ready for the next leap forward that's coming. And for manifesting generators, you're designed to skip steps, right? So you're really designed to figure out that faster and more efficient way to do things. But then if you're skipping steps, a lot of times you may have to go back and fix things that you missed. So again, the same way for generators with that plateau, it's normal to get frustrated when you have to go back and fix something. But it's also important for you to honor the need to loop back around, because if you're missing parts and pieces, you might be missing something important that is part of your own integration process and what you need to have as part of your puzzle of understanding in your journey of mastery. So it's important for all generators, whether you're manifesting generator who's skipping steps and need to go back and gather some of the pieces you might have missed, or the generators who integrate on those plateaus. So just make sure and remember that it's important to have everything you need along the journey to do what you came here to do. Those are important pieces. All right, let me talk to my projectors. So a projector is defined by an undefined or open sacral. It will be white, and no motor to the throat. So remember, the 4 motors in the chart are the will center, the emotional solar plexus, the sacral, and the root center. None of these are connected to the throat. So you can have an open sacral and have your head and ajna connected to the throat, have your G center connected to the throat, have your spleen connected to the throat, but not the 4 motors if you're a projector. So for projectors, the waiting for you is about waiting for the invitation. So, and these are the big invitations in life, right? If it's about making a big move, big career change, big relationships, things like that. For projectors, if you're really trying to kind of force those invitations to come, or if you're kind of inviting yourself places instead of waiting for that invitation to arrive from outside of you, it's going to impact the correct things manifesting in your life, right? And you may be pushing with energy you don't have, which could lead to burnout. So for projectors, it's really important for you to know the value of who you are and what you have to offer. The key with waiting for that outside invitation is that you're waiting for someone to recognize the amazing wisdom that you have to share, right? So if you have these pearls of wisdom and you're just kind of throwing them at the feet of anyone, they're not going to be received, and they're not going to do the work that they're meant to do in the world, because the people you're giving them to don't appreciate it. So knowing your innate value, knowing you have something important to share, and waiting for the people who recognize that in you. And then honoring your energy, because if you're not resourced enough energetically, when the correct invitation comes, you won't have the energy to follow through on it. So these are the important pieces of waiting for that invitation for projectors, right? And then reflectors, of course, are defined by having no defined centers. On this chart, you don't see, this is just an example, you don't see any of the gates or gates highlighted. You'll have all single gates, no complete channels. So all the centers will be open or white on your chart. So for reflectors, you have built into your strategy waiting a full lunar cycle, full 28 or 29 days. The key with that is this is a huge piece with timing, right? I mean, a full lunar cycle to get clarity about what's correct for you. So our society, it's tricky because our society is not really set up for this, right? We're not set up to always give people a full month, to get clarity about if something's right for them. And a lot of times reflectors are kind of forced into trying to make decisions too quickly before they're ready, or making decisions based on maybe other people's energy around them. With all those open centers, you're going to be you're going to feel other people's energy very deeply. You might feel what they think you should do, what they think is right for you. And when you're kind of leaping into decisions like that or being forced to decide too quickly, you might find yourself, out of alignment or in situations that don't feel correct. So, is it possible for you to create a system for yourself that gives you a little more time to make a correct decision, or, to enter into a decision that feels aligned for you? Are you in the right place with the right people? Because I've found that a lot of times if people are in the right place and they're around the right people, they get clarity a little more easily about when those decisions are right for them. They can feel it. And do you know your unique energy patterns? Do you know what they feel like? Can you feel when you're making an authentic choice versus a choice that might be influenced by others' energies, right? Because you're taking in and amplifying energy from around you all the time. So these are some tricks for the reflectors with that waiting strategy. And then manifestors are the one type that don't technically have waiting built into their strategy. They're designed to initiate. A manifestor is defined by an open, undefined sacral center, and they have at least one motor to the throat. So this example shows all 4 motors connected to the throat. That's just so you can see an example of what that might look like. I've personally never met a manifestor who had all 4 or all 3 3 connected to the throat, because it's important to know that the sacral has to be open, so that will not be connected to the throat. But you would have either the will center, the emotional solar plexus, or the root center connected. So for manifestors, a lot of people are kind of envious of their ability to initiate. They're like, oh, they can just go do it. They can just initiate and make themselves known and follow what they want to do when they want to do it. And yeah, they can, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not also just as much under the influence of universal divine timing as the rest of us, right? They need to have a clear understanding of how your unique creative flow works in the world. And again, even manifestors are responding to how their creations are met by the world around them. So I know I've had some readings recently with a number of manifestors who actually express a great deal of frustration that, they're following their flow and they're doing what feels right to them to do, and it's not, landing the way that they had hoped or the way that they wanted. And so, manifestors also have to work with correct timing as well. So I would ask manifestors, do you know how you're uniquely designed to initiate? I know I have one manifestor friend who said it was revolutionary for her when she learned or realized after years of, following strategy, and that she really initiates through conversation with her words, that she can feel sometimes that she initiates others by, in conversations, pointing out to them what's correct for them to do. She's kind of a coach, and that was revolutionary for her to recognize that, because it allowed her to follow those lines of opportunity in her work in the world to initiate correctly. And are you holding a clear vision? Are you following your strategy of informing so that you can honor your flow? And are you honoring your energy as well? Because manifestors also, remember, have that open sacral center as well. So manifestors are also not designed to work in the traditional way that our society tells us we're supposed to work, a 9-to-5 job, just do it. The harder you work, the more you'll achieve. Manifestors also need cycles of rest. So it's important to honor your energy also, so that you're resourced enough to initiate the things that are yours to do.
Before you go on to the
Yeah,
centers, we had 2 questions on types that came in.
sure.
And do you want the questions now or you want to wait till the end?
You can ask them now.
Okay, M on Zoom said, I always felt bad and confused about the missing steps for a manifesting generator,
Mhm.
as if it was wrong,
Mm.
as we have to go back to do the missed steps. So what's the point of skipping steps, please? How does that serve us? What's useful about it?
Yeah, so if you think so, totally. And I think that a lot of manifesting generators feel that way, that they're kind of scolded, for skipping steps and then needing to go back. The point with the skipping steps is it's about efficiency. You really are designed in such a beautiful way to find the most efficient, fastest way to do things. I'm personally surrounded by a lot of manifesting generators in my life, and I can see it, how they can just figure out the fastest, most efficient way through, and it's a real gift. But, it's just part of the bane and the boon of the territory that sometimes as you're finding the fastest way to do something that, if you missed informing someone along the way, or maybe you skipped a step that was actually really important, it's all part of the process. And so I think that it's important to remember for all of the types and all the strategies that it's a journey. You know what I'm saying? It's like none of us are necessarily, well, I guess maybe if we all reach the peak of enlightenment and, we're living in alignment with all of our energy to the highest degree, maybe we can just, move and flow efficiently through life in all those ways and not have any hiccups. But it's a learning journey, and this is life school. And so some of the steps that you miss are important to go back and learn so that you just make sure that you've collected all the marbles in your basket to do what you came to do, not just effectively and efficiently, but also really well.
M continues to go on regarding projectors. What happens if they turn into bullies, or one doesn't see eye to eye with the projector but has to work with one, i.e. a family member who bullies because they know they are right and have the best wisdom?
Oh, that's so interesting. So I would say if it's a bullying kind of energy, then perhaps that's an energy that wasn't invited to be shared. And I think a lot of projectors kind of deal with that, where it's like you feel like you really see the best way to do things, and a lot of times maybe you do, but if other people in your life are not inviting that feedback or that viewpoint, it can feel to them like bullying or like control. And then the projector feels like they're not being listened to, and the person being talked to feels like they're being controlled, and it just is a mess. And so I think that it's important to remember that all of the different types have the ability to fit together in such a beautiful puzzle, right? If we're all honored for the roles that we're here to play. So if the projector is honored as that, wise guide and manager, and is around people who really see that wisdom and invite that wisdom, then the energy is going to flow really well, right? And if the projector can honor that, the generators are here as the builders, and that they really gain a lot of wisdom themselves as they learn and acquire mastery around different topics, and that the manifestors have this, innate creative flow that can really be utilized to initiate, and the reflectors have just this beautiful way of being able to reflect back to us what we see. I mean, we all have the ability to work in harmony, and I think it's all about aligning our energies. And I think that's why I love working with human design and helping people understand their design so much better, especially within family systems, because if we can understand how each of our energies work, then we're much more easily able to honor each other for those energies, to invite when it feels right, to gently and lovingly point out as much as we can if someone's working with their energy maybe not in the highest, right? I don't know if that's helpful.
Pretty much. Okay, I did get another comment from M on the skipping steps. So you're saying that teaching ourselves not to skip steps is pointless.
I'm not sure you can teach yourself. I think it's just instinctive. And I think that, the more you learn about your design and the more that you accept that maybe that's a part of how you operate and learn to work with it in a healthy and a good way, and the more that it can be appreciated by others. Because if you beat yourself up about it, it's just going to bring less harmony to your life. You're not going to be as peaceful. You're not going to be as accepting or loving of yourself. If you can find a way to love that about your design and to understand like, wow, you know, this is just a part of who I am, and it makes me so amazing at doing things really quickly and efficiently and all that. Like, find the things you love about it, because it's just going to be a part of who you are. And I think the more you do it, the more you're going to realize how to move efficiently in a way that works better, how to do well at informing, how to do well at, you know, as you're moving quickly, really pausing a moment to hold on to the clear vision of where you're going and why you're doing what you're doing, and making sure you have at least all the important pieces you need before moving on to the next thing.
Okay, we have 2 more projector question statements.
Okay, let me do this though, because I want to make sure I get through all the information. Can you hold on to those, and then I'll
can
as many as I can at the end? That would be awesome.
And besides, I want to get to the centers.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the centers and how they work with regulating time. So again, if you have your human design chart handy, feel free to, you know, compare this against what you have open or defined in your chart. So let's start with the spleen center over here. And the spleen is the center for intuition, health, and time. So this is in the now, in the moment, intuition, right? It's right here in the present moment. And so this is kind of the like, oh my God, there's a bear, run. It's that kind of an instinct, right? So are you connected to your intuition that's over here in the spleen? And do you trust it? Do you trust your intuitive knowingness? And then the gates of the spleen, Karen did a whole other class about this, but the gates of the spleen also can have an aspect that's tied in with fear. And so are you allowing yourself to be held back by fear or stuck in old patterns or stories from the past, right? Sometimes in the spleen, you can actually have a fear of old patterns from the past, or you can have a fear of the future. If, you know, you're super gifted and intuitive and you can kind of see what's coming, you might actually have a fear of what you know. And then it's important with this center also to understand, like, are you able to tell the difference between what your intuition is telling you and what might be a fear response? So are you getting an intuitive no that something is incorrect for you, or are you afraid of jumping into it? So these are important questions to ask yourself if you have a defined spleen in particular, but also anytime you have any of the gates active off of here, particularly the gate 57 is the most intuitive gate in the charts, the gate of penetrating intuition. And so that's that super in the now, in the moment, intuitive response lives in the spleen. The solar plexus over here is kind of on the other end of the spectrum. This is the center for emotion and creativity. People with a defined emotional solar plexus have a unique emotional wave. So they're going to experience in their own way, in their own consistent patterns of energy, emotional highs and emotional lows. And the key with the defined emotional solar plexus is about waiting for clarity. There's waiting built into this. The clarity comes when you get the same response to something at both the high and the low end of your wave, right? So if you are on a high and you're feeling really great and an opportunity comes up and you jump at it and you're super excited about it, and then you emotionally crash into a low, you might have kind of buyer's remorse, right? Like, oh man, why did I jump into that? Or if you suddenly don't really have the energy to follow through on what you committed to, you know, maybe you might start beating yourself up about it, like, oh, did I make the wrong decision? I can't do this. So as you navigate your emotional wave, as the big opportunities come along, at least, you know, about moving, job, relationship, does this still feel good to you, both when you're on a high and when you're on a low, when you travel the full spectrum of your wave? So that's where the waiting for clarity comes in order to make those big decisions. And then if you happen to have the emotional solar plexus open, a lot of times people can kind of avoid conflict in this area because they can feel other people so deeply. They don't want to disappoint anyone. They don't want to be met with judgment or disapproval. And so sometimes you can abdicate your own internal compass, your own creative knowing by how others might respond to you. So remember that the solar plexus is aligned creation energy over time. So the wave and just the way that the creative and emotional energy creates is over a longer period of time. The sacral center we talked about a bit with the generators, but this is the center for workforce and life force energy. If your sacral is defined, you have that instinctive sacral response that is important to tune into to know what's the correct opportunity for you to jump into. So are you responding? Are you connected to that sacral response? Are you jumping into the right work? And if your sacral is open, again, that question that we talked about for my projectors, reflectors, and manifestors, are you honoring your energy? Are you trying to make it happen? Are you feeding off the energy of the defined sacrals around you? And then when you can go, go, go when you're in the aura of those other people, but when you get home and you're in your own energy, you just kind of crash. So, and whether or not you have enough energy to follow through on the things that you're committing to is going to impact if you're able to manifest what you want, right? And then the root center, I've heard it sometimes actually called the regulator for timing. It kind of regulates the timing of all three of these other centers that it's connected to, right? The root center, it's a center for getting things done. It also has a distinct pulse of doing energy. And so the defined root will kind of turn on and turn off. And so I can't tell you how many times in a reading people have just had such revelations about this, where when I say, sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off, and they're like, oh my God, that's so me. Like sometimes I have all the energy in the world to do things, and sometimes I just want to sit on the couch. And that's natural and normal for the defined root center. And so when the root pulse is on, it's going to turn on the doing, it's going to turn on and impact the emotional wave and creative energy here, the intuitive knowing energy here, and the doing energy here as well, right? So do you honor that pulse? Do you rest when the pulse is off, and do you take advantage of that pulse when it's on for you to do things? And then when the root center is open, it's a pressure center. So you'd feel under pressure to get things done, and sometimes you're acting just out of that pressure rather than knowing that something's correct. And so it's important, if the root is open, to really ask yourself, are you just operating based in pressure to get things done, or are you doing things because it's really the correct time for you to do them? So those are the four centers that really regulate timing in the chart. But when we have alignment in our energy as a whole, and we have an awareness of how they operate and some of the places we might get tripped up, it just helps us become more aligned in a way that lets us manifest easier and more quickly. Because when we're operating from some of the lower expressions of our energy, then we can interfere a little bit with the unfolding of that life path a little bit. So I want to talk a little bit about the other centers as well. So the head and the ajna, the head when it's open is another pressure center to figure things out, right? But anything really above the throat here is not where we're designed to be making our decisions from. The correct decisions manifest according to your strategy. So this will be a place where we receive inspirations, downloads, epiphanies, beautiful visions and ideas, but we aren't necessarily supposed to act on those ideas and visions right away, right? Our strategy is going to guide us to the correct action in the right time. So if you are acting under pressure to be certain or to figure things out, the timing will probably not be correct. So allow those visions to come in, allow those inspirations to come in, and then follow your strategy to know which of those inspirations are really correct to follow through on in the right time. The throat is kind of the gearbox of the whole chart, right? And this is the center for communication and manifestation. It's where we move our energy out into the world. So do you know how you're designed to communicate? And not necessarily just with a completely defined throat like this, but what gates are coming off of your throat here. Even if it's an open throat, if you have some active gates on there, it's going to tell you a lot about your communication style. When the throat is open, a lot of times, or even if it's unmotorized, so really the generators, projectors, and reflectors, sometimes you can push to be heard or recognized, even if other people aren't ready to hear you. And it's just a way for us to move our energy, right? So it's a natural inclination. But if you're pushing to be heard, you're not really following the right time. It's the same thing for the projectors with waiting for that invitation. When someone recognizes you and they recognize that you have something really beautiful and important to share, then they're going to be open to receive what you have to offer. Whereas if you're kind of pushing your ideas out into the world without that invitation, kind of like the person with the projector question asked, right? If someone is just, telling you all this stuff that you didn't ask for, you're like, whoa, 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 buddy. Like, I didn't ask you for that. I don't know what you're talking about. Who made you boss, right? So that invitation and recognition can be really important for whether or not what you had to say is going to be well received. And therefore, if it's going to make an impact and lead to something else, right? If your throat's defined also, it's really good to be aware of what centers it's connected to, because this is going to impact the manner and the timing of how you communicate. So, you know, someone who has, for example, their spleen connected to their throat, well, they're probably pretty good at discussing or talking about their intuitive knowing, what you intuitively feel and understand. People who have the throat connected to their emotional solar plexus are probably very good at talking about their feelings. People who have their throat connected to their AJNA and possibly the head are probably really good at talking about or communicating their ideas, right? So these are things that are also really helpful to know and understand about yourself. The G center is the center of identity, direction, and it's home to the wonderful magnetic monopole, which is literally the place where we attract into our life whatever is correct for our soul purpose and our life purpose, right? So if the G center is defined, you're going to probably have much more of a clear sense of the direction that you're called to go in your life. If it's open, you might have more variability and flexibility in how you might be meant to manifest your purpose. But either way, it's your vibration that's going to attract that to you, right? So we were talking about the emotional solar plexus being about creative energy and manifestation over time, right? So and how important emotional alignment is. Well, that emotional alignment, what it does is it calibrates your heart, and then that impacts what you're attracting through that magnetic monopole into your life to manifest. So are you maintaining a vibration that's going to attract the correct things to you? Are you aligned with the truth of who you are? Are you operating from an authentic identity? Or are you operating from who you were told you should be, or who other people have told you you're supposed to be, or maybe from conditioning who you picked up on that you were supposed to be from everyone around you? And then the G also is really connected to right place and right people, particularly if your G center is open. You're going to be feeling people really, really deeply, who they are. And so you can be, it's going to influence your energy if you're not in the right place, not with the right people, and therefore it's going to impact your ability to attract into your life what's correct for you and to manifest it in the right time. So these are all things that's good to be aware of. And then finally, the will center. This is the center for value and resources. So again, your vibration is so key in what you're attracting into your life. And this center really asks us if we know our innate value. A lot of us think that we're valuable because of what we do, how hard we work, how much we're able to bring in, how many things we can use to prove our worth, right? But that's not where our innate value really comes from. We're valuable because we exist. We're valuable because we're here. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have something important to do and to offer. So do you know that? Do you know your innate worthiness? Or are you trying to prove yourself somehow? Also, this center is really tied in with rest. This is a center for willpower. So if you have a defined will, you really have the ability to push through and just do things. I've met so many people in the last weeks who are open sacral beings, manifestors, and projectors with a defined will. And even though they don't have the energy necessarily for doing, they have the ability to push through and just do it anyway. But then they completely deplete themselves, and then they don't have the energy to do what they came here to do, right? So do you value yourself enough to rest? And are you personally resourced in every way? Because you need to have the energetic and physical resources in order to do what you came here to do. So sometimes, a lot of times, we'll discover that people's charts contain some conundrums when it comes to timing. So as you heard me talk about with the different centers, there are some energies in the chart that innately work more quickly and some that require more time. So, for example, the defined emotional solar plexus requires a little more time. The integration circuit, which is part of individual circuitry, requires more time, as it sounds like, to integrate information, understand it. And, for example, the reflector strategy requiring, a full month as part of its strategy to make a really clear decision. Whereas manifesting generators move super quickly, especially manifestors with the 3420 channel. If you have a defined spleen, again, that's just really this intuitive in the now moment. People with a defined spleen who are generators, if their spleen's connected to their sacral, that's going to really speed up. It's this in the moment sacral response. So if people have some conflicting energies with different timing, it can create a conundrum. So for example, if you have a defined emotional solar plexus and a defined spleen, it can create a conundrum for you. Well, your emotional solar plexus needs to wait for clarity, but your defined spleen knows right now, and it wants you to act on it, right? Or a manifesting generator with a 3420 who has a lot of integration energy and needs that time to integrate. I've met a few people actually I've done readings for that have multiple of these things, where you have the solar plexus, you have the integration circuit, and a 3420 manifesting generator. I've met a few people actually with this combination of energies, and it can really create this internal conundrum in terms of making decisions and knowing if something is right for you. So part of life school, as I like to call it, is about learning to navigate these internal conundrums. We all have them in so many different ways in our chart. And a lot of times if you get a personal reading, this is what the person who talks through your chart with you is going to talk through. You have, you know, these energies here that are kind of seem like a push me pull you a little bit. But learning to navigate that conundrum and find the places in there where you can understand your own energy well enough to feel what's correct is how we learn and grow. And it's part of, as Karen would call it, our soul curriculum. So, and this happens over time, guys. So again, you know, we're not like a mosquito. A mosquito comes into life, it's alive for one day, right? And it gets to eat, mate, lay eggs, and then it dies, right? We have longer than that. Karen's been talking a lot lately about how life is long. We like to say life is short, but life is actually long. And it's a good thing because it gives us the opportunity to navigate some of these conundrums and learn about them as we go, right? Another reason that things sometimes don't manifest according to the timing that we wish they would is because of the wisdom of the universe. Sometimes opportunities don't show up because we're not ready yet. And we don't always know all the pieces of that puzzle. If you're burnt out, if you don't have the energy, the universe in all its divine wisdom is not going to provide you with that opportunity right now because you won't have the energy to follow through on it. It's going to wait until you have the energy you need, until you've rested and resourced yourself enough to be able to show up for that opportunity. Maybe there's lessons we still need to learn, right, before we can get to the next step. I think that can be a super frustrating thing for really all the different types, you know. Or maybe there's loose ends that need to be tied up, you know. Are there some things you haven't wrapped up from the past that you need to kind of bring some closure to before you're really ready for that next door to open, right? So we can't always know why, but sometimes there is a divine wisdom in why things don't happen in the exact time that we manufacture in our own heads, right? I love this quote by Joseph Campbell: "Where you stumble, there lies your treasure." So sometimes these conundrums, these things that are struggles, these things that feel like we're kind of bumping up against that we have to work our way through, are the pieces that actually bring us the lessons we need to move forward. Let's talk a little bit about where timing lives beyond the chart a little bit. So I've talked a little bit about our vibration and what that means. And I've talked a lot, you know, in various quantum alignment shows and about the stories and meanings that we hold in our life and how they really have an impact on what we manifest and what shows up for us. So let's look at that in relation to time. What stories or meanings do you have about time? What beliefs do you have about time? Do you find yourself saying to yourself a lot like, oh, I never have enough time? This one I hear all the time: time is money, right? You got to work hard, work more, and work longer hours if you're going to make enough, the kind of money that you want. My time is valuable, right? What kind of value do we place on how we spend our time and how we're expecting the value to come back to us? And then it's important to remember that time is actually a construct. So we can influence it by how we relate to it. I've been seeing some interesting articles being published recently with new scientific theories that the past, present, and future actually all exist at once. That this concept of linear time, where some things have already happened and some things haven't happened yet, and we're, you know, right here in this now moment, is actually not true at all. And we see that a little bit in Einstein's theory of relativity also, right? So time is a construct. How do you relate to it? You see this a little bit in Joe Dispenza's work as well. I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Dispenza, but he talks about how we can bring the future that we are dreaming of into the present moment by acting, believing, thinking, feeling as though it is already here. Because a lot of science says, some branches of science say that it is, right? So if you can create an emotional, vibrational connection to the future that you want, it actually brings it to you. Joy and gratitude are regulators of timing. So the more that you're in a state of joy, the more you're in a state of gratitude, you increase your energetic vibration. And the higher your vibration, the more easily and quickly you will attract into your life things that are in alignment with that vibration. So follow the things that bring you joy, right? Ask yourself what's already working. Sometimes we are so focused on what's out there that we don't have yet, that we forget or don't pay attention to the things that we've already created that are already working, right? And the more you can connect to that and find gratitude for that, the more it's going to create more of itself in your life. As a reminder, studies show that gratitude actually rewires your brain. So it improves, it actually changes the molecular structure of your brain. It makes you healthier and happier, and it's a positive cycle. So gratitude perpetuates more gratitude. Finding meaning in challenges. I did a past quantum alignment show about struggle and the importance of remembering that our struggles have a purpose. I think that when things aren't happening in the timing that we want them to, which usually is right now, right? We can really just resist it so much and get really stuck in the, ugh, like, why isn't this happening for me? I must be doing something wrong. Why can't I just create what I want, right? But remember that the challenges that you endure to get where you're going are partly what give you the information, the lessons that you need to get there. So the struggle has a purpose, and the lessons and the resiliency that you cultivate help you evolve and grow. So part of what actually speeds up the time that you spend in challenging moments of your life is how you look at the challenge. If you can shift your perspective from this sucks, how long is this going to go on, this is terrible, all that ever does is slow down time, right? I mean, when you're sitting and staring at a clock, doesn't it feel like that second hand is moving just horribly slow? But when you look at it as a growth opportunity, when you look at it as an adventure, when you really ask yourself, okay, what am I supposed to be learning here? How can I take this and turn it into something positive? It actually speeds up the time it takes for you to get through whatever the challenge is, to see the solution. When you're looking for the solutions, they're going to find you. When you look at the struggle and the challenge, that's all you're going to see as well. And then strengthening your faith muscle. So cultivating faith and trust brings about that emotional alignment that we were talking about, which calibrates your heart, which attracts people and circumstances into your life that are in alignment with your soul. So we talk about this a lot in the quantum alignment system. Do you believe that you're supported? And do you believe that you deserve that support? In the human design chart, actually, if you look at the gate 55, it's one of the most mystical gates in the chart, and it actually is a seat of abundance in the chart. It's also the gate, a seat of faith, and they're intimately tied together. And so when you're connected with that faith and with that connection to something higher than yourself, and you believe that you're supported and you believe that everything is working out for you, that's when the abundance naturally flows in. You see that right in the chart. And when you lose that faith and you believe that nothing has meaning, then everything kind of stops. So what can we do, right? Everyone asks me, what can I do about it? How can I influence the timing? We've talked about this a little bit. Karen says, we can't control timing, but we can influence it. So the first thing you can do is you can lay the groundwork. So those of us who have waiting built into our strategies, my generators, manifesting generators, projectors, and reflectors, just because you're waiting doesn't mean you're sitting around doing nothing, right? If you've gotten an inspiration or an instinct like, oh, I'm meant to teach this program, or I'm meant to do this thing, I'm meant to start this business, but the external things have not come about, you haven't gotten the invitation to go and share that work, nobody's recognized it yet, it hasn't shown up in your external environment, you can still do the things that are going to get you ready for when the opportunity arrives. Design that website. Start building out the curriculum for your program. If you feel like I'm meant to write this book, write it. Have the manuscript ready so that when the publisher, the person shows up and says, hey, do you have something to show me? You can say, yep, here's my manuscript, right? So laying the groundwork and having the behind the scenes and the foundation ready, there's really no timeline on that. Do what you feel called to do. It's the part where you're waiting for that recognition to actually bring the full vision to fruition, to bring it out into the world. That's when, you know, you're going to want to wait for that to manifest according to strategy. But it's actually smart to have the pieces in place on the back end for yourself so that when the opportunity shows up, you're ready to go. Secondly, care for yourself. Care for your energy. Cultivate your sense of worthiness. Cultivate your emotional well-being. Cultivate your vitality. Because again, the universe in its divine abundant wisdom, if you don't have the energy, if you're not resourced enough to do it, the opportunities are not going to show up. And if you don't believe you deserve it, they're not going to show up either, right? So as much as you can care for yourself, mind your emotional vibration, mind your worthiness, and have the physical energy and resources you need, then again, when the opportunity shows up, you're ready and you believe you deserve it. Pay attention. I find that sometimes people will look at me and be like, oh, well, nothing's showing up. Like, I'm just sitting here and waiting and nothing's happening. And I always ask them, really? Are you sure? And a lot of times when people go back in and they start kind of looking at their life, they'll realize, oh, you know, this person said this thing about that the other week, but I didn't notice, or I didn't follow through on that. I'm going to go look that up. Or, you know, there's things happening around us all the time, opportunities, things to respond to. And I think sometimes we just don't notice, either because we have tunnel vision, like we're so expecting something to show up in a certain way, and we're really attached to, you know, this person's going to show up and they're going to say this thing to me, or if I go to that place, you know, but things don't always happen the way that we plan them. In fact, I would venture to say most of the time they don't. A lot of times the best things that manifest in our life are a surprise. They're not things we expected to happen the way they did. So the more you can pay attention to what is showing up, the more you're going to be able to respond and see the opportunities and go after them. And then expect opportunities. The more you actually expect that things are going to work out for you, the more that they will. That's actually one of my mottos for 2020 is I believe in magic and I expect miracles. So expect it. Cultivate your faith. We just talked about this a little bit, but do you trust that you're supported? Do you believe that you are worthy of that support? Do you believe that everything is happening in the right way at the right time? The more that you cultivate that faith and that trust, the more you're going to be open to receive the things that are already wanting to come your way. What's that other quote? I think it's by Rumi. What you seek is seeking you, right? And then practice gratitude. We just talked about this a little bit, but focus on what you already have. I sometimes even recommend for people to actually sit down and make a list. That if they're so focused on, oh, you know, money is just not working out for me right now. I don't have enough. I always encourage people to ask them, well, okay, money is a representation of value. It's a representation of meaning. What do you have in your life that is really valuable? What do you have in your life that is meaningful to you, that is working out? Oh, well, I have a loving family and I have 2 kids and, you know, and people will rattle off a whole list of the things that are working. No, but the money. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so not all the pieces of the puzzle are in place yet the way you want them to be, but some of them are. And so if you focus on the things that are working and you practice gratitude for those things, again, it perpetuates a positive cycle of gratitude. More things will come into your life for you to be grateful for. I want to end today, and we'll take some questions then, if we still have time, about an old Cherokee legend called the 2 Wolves. So there's an old Cherokee teaching his grandson about life, and he says, a fight is going on inside me. A terrible fight between 2 wolves, and one is dark and one is light. One is anger and envy and sorrow and arrogance and self-pity and guilt, and the other is joy and peace and love and hope and serenity and kindness and empathy and generosity and truth, compassion and faith. And the same fight is going on inside of you and inside of every other person too. And the grandson thinks about it and says, well, which wolf will win? And his grandfather simply says, the one you feed. So I would invite all of you today to ask yourselves, which wolf are you feeding in your life? Which wolf are you paying attention to? And is it the one you want? Is it the one you want to be paying attention to? So that is my presentation for today. And I believe we have about 10 minutes. So there are
some questions that have come in, or that came in before.
Yeah.
So Linda on Zoom asks, how, as a projector, does one find the right info to get an invitation? For example, how do people know how to find you to invite you? Does that make sense?
How to find you to invite you. That's interesting. So from most of the very wise projectors that I personally know, they have told me that it's a lot about the vibration that you're carrying. Do you know your innate value in the world? Do you know your really important role that you're here to play? And I mean, I think there are some, key pieces, again, like I was talking about with laying the groundwork, like, there are some things like, are you out there in the world? Do you have a website? Do you have, any of these other pieces where if people wanted to find you, they could, right? But I also, to be honest, know a lot of people, like business people, who've told me, they're like, I built a multi-million-dollar business. I didn't have a website. I didn't have business cards. It's just the right people found me. And so I think it's both and, I think that it can be either, it can be both. And from what the projectors in my life have told me and taught me is that it's really a lot for projectors about cultivating that internal vibration of worthiness, and about minding your energy, and about having enough energy for people to find you. And then, I don't know, I think also invitations can show up in a lot of different ways too. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's always about someone just walking up to you and being like, hello, this is my name. Do you have something important to tell me or share with me right now? I think that there's a lot about interpersonal relationship and interpersonal connection that sometimes we miss, And so I guess I would also ask, are you fully open to receiving the invitations? Are you fully open to receiving people? I know for me, sometimes I have a second line in my profile, which is the Hermit, and I just truly have a very much a hermit in me, where sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to see or talk to anyone. And a lot of times that's what I get, when I do that. And I need that time. I need that time to go inside and to resource myself. And then I find that a lot of times when I have the energy again, I come back out, people show up out of the woodwork with, all kinds of things. So yeah.
And it's not just that, you can be responding to an invitation you receive in the mail, or an invitation
Totally.
in a marketing thing that you saw that says, I invite you to come, or I'm requesting your presence. That's another thing. And
absolutely.
And does it raise your energy? Does that make...
Yeah, absolutely. Or even just an invitation for a conversation. You're on a bus or a train and someone makes eye contact with you and you strike up a conversation, and who knows what comes, who knows what comes out of it. So
do you have a minute? That's always a good starter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another Marley on Zoom says, I'm a split definition projector and have been out of work for 11 months. How can one afford to be picky about a job opportunity if you don't have enough money to pay rent next month? Even if the job is not necessarily a good fit. Right now, I'm just trying to have the trust that the right opportunity for me will come at the right time, hopefully this month.
Yeah, Marley, I hear that. And this is something I hear from projectors a lot as well. And, it's tricky because part of being resourced is making sure you can put a roof over your head and have food on the table and keep the lights on, right? And these are practical details about life. And I know that, again, I have some very wise projectors in my life who told me these things, but, sometimes as a projector, in those moments where it's like, okay, you've been, out of work for a long time, if the financial need is really there, sometimes there is a practical piece to being like, okay, I just need to find myself a job that doesn't feel like it's my heart and soul's highest calling, but it's going to sustain me. And if it's possible to find a job like that, allows you the time and space to work in the way you need to, where it's not necessarily like a 9 to 7 minimum wage, you know what I'm saying? But a kind of a job where it can allow you the time to rest and restore your energy. And then to really work that faith muscle, like you're saying, to just keep the faith that the right thing is going to show up. Yeah, I know one projector who recently told me that she was working at kind of a grocery store chain for a little while that was really, it was decently paying, but the hours were really just like not great for her. And she worked and saved up enough money to be able to just leave that job and take like a month off and know that financially she was going to be stable. And she like went to stay with some friends at the beach and just resourced her energy. And in that month of rest and restoration that she had saved up for, tons of opportunities and invitations started showing up. So, you know, I think I love that story because you know, she had a financial need that she took care of. By having that job, she recognized when that job in itself was not working for her. It was, you know, zapping her energy. It wasn't working for what she needed. She created the finances to do something that was in alignment with her energy needs, and then that alone created the space for some invitations and opportunities to come in, and now she's really excited about some of the things that are showing up for her, you know? So again, sometimes we don't know all the pieces with the timing, and I think that's the most frustrating answer, is that we're not always, we just aren't always in control of the whole story. But again, you know, sitting with those pieces that can at least influence the timing, practicing gratitude, laying the groundwork, doing the things we know to do to calibrate our vibration can be really, really helpful.
And I've heard Karen say probably a while back that sometimes you have to take the job, but that it's not necessarily, okay, I'll get this. It's not necessarily the job that's earning you the money that's fulfilling your life purpose. You just, and you mentioned this at the beginning, you're here, so you're fulfilling your life purpose. So maybe it's something that gets you the money so that you can say you want to rescue animals. I mean, so you have a job, you can go, and that's your life's calling. So that was just, so now I'm switching over to a question on Facebook. Nanette on Facebook says, do you have tips for informing as a manifesting generator?
Do it. No, I'm joking. I'm half joking. I think that from what I've noticed, there's just a way that manifesting generators, kind of like manifestors, you can just kind of get in your own flow. And maybe Cindy can also speak to this as well, but I think that for manifesting generators, it's sometimes about, because part of your strategy, you know, is about, it's about responding and informing, but you also have that envisioning piece as part of your strategy. So it's about cultivating that ability to kind of take a little bit of a pause long enough to really, you know where you're going, you know, you have the sense of what you're trying to do, pausing long enough to really hold the vision of where you're going and why, making sure that vision is in alignment with your actions. And then part of that pause is also the pause to inform. Who's around you that's going to be impacted by this? And how would them knowing certain pieces of it make the process smoother for everybody? Because the truth is, when you don't inform, you know, how that impacts other people around you ends up blowing back on you too. And then everybody's kind of dealing with the fallout. So it actually benefits you as well to inform other people.
And I've also heard manifesting generators say they also need to be informed, because if it's it's going to affect, because they have the vision and you have something that might affect their vision. It's nice the other way too. It is 1:58. I have 4 questions. I had one big question on Facebook, and it looks like 4 more questions on Zoom. Do you want to take them all, or do you want to?
Why don't we take one more, and then Cindy, maybe you can post the questions from Zoom onto the Facebook video, and I can answer those. I can type in an answer after.
Okay. Well, it looks like, well, Linda just said, thank you, Betsy. That was incredible.
Oh, good.
But I'm going to go to the question. Well, since you'll go back and answer Harry's question on Facebook, correct? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's take the question on Zoom. Wow, I can imagine a projector who tends to be bullied feeling resentful at being asked, almost so resentful if they aren't asked, and then bullying as a result.
So they're resentful of being asked or not being asked?
I think, well, it's aren't asked, and then yeah, probably both. Because they're being resentful that they have being asked, and then they're also resentful at not being asked for their advice.
You know, and I will say this is not just exclusive to projectors. I find, you know, there's a number of energies in the chart that, you know, have a lot of knowingness or feel like they have the answer. And if they're not invited to share, you can get really resentful about it, you know, like, oh, I see this thing and you don't recognize it and I just feel like I need to share it. And not in a bad way either. Like when you know something and you feel like it's a big deal and it can make a difference, you want to share, right? You want to help people. But I think this waiting for recognition thing is hard for people. And this doesn't always work, but I sometimes teach people a little hack, which is, you know, if you have something to say and it hasn't been invited, you know, you can ask people, you can say, hey, you know, I see something or I have something to share. Is it okay if I share it with you? And people will tell you, they'll be like, you know what, not right now. Or they'll say, sure. And then if they open the gate to that, at least, you know, you're increasing the chance that you're going to be received and heard in a way that is more meaningful because people had a choice in receiving it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. But M, if you recall, is the manifesting generator and the projector is the bully. And so I don't know if you would agree with this.
Go ahead. I think that bullying in general is just not, you can't figure out how to handle a projector who wants to push their ideas onto an MG. I think that, honestly, I think that this is an interpersonal thing that I think we just need to work out as humans, if I'm honest. Like, I think even if there's an opening for there to be a conversation, you know, where you can even talk about the energy dynamics at play, you know, and especially for a manifesting generator where you probably just, you know, you have your own ideas and you know, go in this way and the projector is seeing like, and trying to manage if that's not something you asked for, that's probably frustrating. And then it's frustrating for them to not be received. And so there's just frustration all around. I mean, who knows where that bullying response came from, whether it was something that was learned or whether it's something that they've just, you know, started taking on as a response to their own environment. But I just think that anytime you have something like that, for me personally, just as a human, I like to have a conversation with someone about it if they're open to it and just even talk about the energy dynamics at play. I don't know if they know about human design or they're open to learning about human design, but to talk about this concept about the response, you know, and why it's important, because I think sometimes it helps projectors to understand the why behind waiting to be invited, because the why behind it honors that they actually do have something valuable to say. It's saying like, I get it, you're super wise and you're here to guide and manage others, but your management style is a little intense, you know? And, you know, if you're trying to manage a team and the team doesn't want to be managed, it just creates conflict. And so if you're able to work out, you know, more of an interpersonal.
Or that's not going with the vision I have. Thank you so much for sharing. That's not going with the vision I have right now, but I'll keep it under advisement, you know.
Oh, sorry. That was you saying that.
That was me saying. That wasn't them saying that. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that's a good response.
I mean, it's still recognizing that they had good advice.
Yeah.
You got it, but it's not because you're manifest. It's not going with the vision that you had right now, but you'll keep it there. You'll keep it in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Or even communicating, you know, I really appreciate your ideas and I want to be able to hear them, but when you communicate them in this way, it's really hard for me to hear them.
That's another good way.
Another way to do it. So.
But bringing it back to your timing, this is all, I mean, on each of the types, that's part of the frustration is that they don't think their time, okay, come on, spit it out. When they're not being heard or they're not in their value, the timing, it might not be the correct time to share something. It might not be the correct time to.
Yeah.
And we don't, and you had said that, and I really liked it, that we have to have faith that there's a bigger picture that we might not be aware of all the parts.
Yes, totally. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, in honoring timing, we're a few minutes over, so I want to thank everyone for coming today, and I also wanted to tell you I wanted to offer You've all had such great questions, and I know that a lot of times, you know, a personal human design reading is really an amazing way to get more in touch with your design and how to navigate some of these conundrums and things. So I've created a special offer for you all today. Thank you for listening. If you happen to want a human design reading to learn more about your design, I'm offering 33% off my prices. During this Mercury retrograde cycle, it's an awesome time to kind of look back, reflect at how you've been doing things, what works and what doesn't, and make some needed changes. So I will post a link to my online scheduling site on the Facebook comments, as well as the code that you can use to get that discount, and that will apply to all of the different types of human design readings that I offer. So if that's something you'd like to take advantage of, that will be available. The code is good for about 2 weeks. I think it's good until like the 13th.
So a Mercury retrograde code. All right, for
It
timing
is.
again.
I should have called it that. So.
Well, thanks so much, Betsy. This was wonderful.
Thank you all. Have a beautiful weekend, and can it be emailed? Yes. You know what? There's going to be.
We'll post it on the replay page.
Yes, and we send out an email with a link to the replay tomorrow, so we can include it in that email as well, if that's helpful. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and have an amazing weekend, and integrate.